board.
Hello, I'm Marthe Schneider, and Devi and I are the co-founders of Authentic Tantra, Holistic Sex Education. And we are here today to have another episode of our Sex as Medicine TV for you guys.
Yay! So today the topic that we wanted to address is the controversy around the Jade Egg practices, because lovely Miss Gwyneth Paltrow endorsed them on her blog recently, the Goop blog. And so a lot of people have been weighing in. A lot of Western medical professionals have been weighing in on the topic and saying that it's not safe and it's not healthy. And both Marthe and I are practitioners. We don't use the Jade Egg, we use yoni balls. But I've been trained in the Jade Egg practices, and so we wanted to share our perspective, and particularly Marthe, because Marthe is a pelvic floor specialist. So I thought it would be amazing to actually have somebody with a Western medical background talk about the Jade Egg practices from an informed place, someone who's actually done them, because it's pretty obvious that the people who are discrediting the practices have never actually done the practices themselves, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of, if I may just add, that there's a lot of sharing about Jade Eggs and Benoit balls and these different stones, without actually giving an instruction about how to use them safely and how to combine them with a proper exercise regimen. So there's no way you can have results if you're just sticking up, a jade egg in your yoni and just expecting magical results that way won't really happen. So we're here also to provide with some real tangible user advice.
Yeah, so that's a key thing. So it's not just that like the Jade Egg practices universally are good for you. It's the Jade Egg practices done the way that you are instructed to use them in this framework can be healthy and supportive for your body. So I'm going to just share a little bit about the Jade Egg practices and where they come from. So they're ancient practices. They come from the Taoist tradition. So that's a Chinese, from China, spiritual tradition. And it's actually part of like a holistic health program. And so they were taught as a form of sexual yoga to exercise the muscles of the pelvic floor, exercise the organs, the associated organs, and just make everything function better. So just like any other muscle of the body, when we have a regular exercise program and we're building our muscles and, exercising, running and all that, using our muscles, they function better, right? They're healthier, blood flow, circulation, everything works better. If you don't walk for a year, your leg muscles are going to atrophy. They're not going to work. So your pelvic floor is a muscle. And so it's important to exercise that part of our body, especially because we tend to like forget that it even exists, right? Mm-hmm. So Marthe is going to share with us from this perspective the importance of exercising these muscles and how to do it properly and correctly. And then, what Jade Egg practices essentially are, the way we would understand them as Westerners, is as vaginal weightlifting. And that is an actual recommended practice that Western pelvic floor specialists, give to people, prescribe to people to improve the health of their pelvic floor. So that's what a Jade Egg practice is. So Marthe, you take it.
All right. Okay. So I guess I want to begin with just giving a little instruction about what the pelvic floor is, because not everyone out there might know. So the pelvic floor musculature is a hammock-shaped muscle structure that plugs up the end of, or the bottom of our pelvis. In the bottom of our pelvis, we have an opening. That's where babies come out. And unless we have musculature there, there's no support for our internal organs, for example. The pelvic floor has many functions, but that's one of them. So the musculature is like a weave of fibers in different directions, and it ensures that we have this support at the bottom of our pelvis. So when it is resting completely, we are able to pee and poop and
have babies.
And have babies, exactly. So when we are thinking about whatever, walking down the street, we are still using our pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is supposed to have a certain tonicity, certain activity or level of contraction at all times, unless we are giving birth, peeing or pooping. So then we can also add to that extra contraction. We can make it work harder if and we need to do so sometimes. For example, if we have a sudden increase in pressure going downward, as in jumping, sneezing, coughing, laughing, or just dancing around, then we are actively compressing the abdominal space, simply because we're activating our muscles there, and that makes stuff being squished in other directions, and it can only go either up or down. So the squishing upward creates sound, so we can talk, right? We are having this pressure going up, so there's actually sound coming out. Well, the lower end too gets affected, but if we're not intentionally wanting to pee or pass wind or anything like that, then we need to plug up our lower end, and that's when the pelvic floor contracts a little extra to prevent involuntary leaking from happening. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, a lot of women especially, experience involuntary leaking of urine when they when they sneeze or cough or laugh or jump. And this is called stress urinary incontinence. It's not psychological stress, but the stress from increased pressure from above down to the pelvic floor. Yeah, so that's an example.
Yeah, so very, very common. So peeing when you cough or laugh or something like that. And it's like, oh, and your little panties are a little bit wet. So very common I hear from women after giving birth to children, right? That's a very common, kind of
especially after childbirth. But also the simple process of aging makes our pelvic floor sag more and more because it's subject to gravity. The bladder and the uterus and the rectum are resting on top of this hammock, and with time, unless we are exercising properly, which is what we're gonna talk about, it begins to sag. And then if it's sagged down a little bit, it's going to be harder for it to contract and mobilize against increased pressure or more weight from above. We're here to talk about these jade egg exercises from ancient Taoism. Now, I'm a physiotherapist trained in this Western tradition, and I highly value these Taoist exercises because they also address, in addition to the musculature, they address the breath and how the breath is intricately linked with the function of the pelvic floor. Mm-hmm. And also these Taoist exercises and the crystal of the jade eggs, they also address or provide a remedy for our energy body. So energy body meaning our energy can be out of balance, or we can have negative energy that we need to get rid of, or also the downward voiding winds. I'm not going to go into detail, but downward voiding winds are intricately linked with the excretion and retention of fluids and solids through our lower end, just like our musculature. So in order to have good results for all of these systems, the energy body system and the physical body system, we want to do exercises that work both the systems.
Okay, so I want to pause you there for those people, because some of the thing is, there's skepticism about, what is this energy body? So I just want to say here that this is wisdom and science from the Eastern tradition. And you don't necessarily have to believe it, but it is a different culture and a different tradition. And just because it doesn't, necessarily fit into the Western box doesn't invalidate it, doesn't make it any less true. So It is Eastern science. So this talk about the energy body and pranas is Eastern science. Okay, so what we're talking about with the Jade Egg practices is a holistic practice. It accounts for the physiology as well as the energy being, right? And so, a lot of it's becoming more well known in allopathic medicine that like the way we think affects our physical health. So it's kind of that same relationship. The way we think, the way we feel is our energy, right? Our emanation in life. And so that affects our physical body. That is a fact that has been scientifically proven as a fact. So that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's important to point out. Thank you, Devi, that we're coming from a place of acknowledging this part of our being as well, not just the physical.
And respecting this other tradition, having respect for other traditions. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. Which is why we make use of these exercises in this ancient science, and it's very important to be aware of this, because so much of the gold from these ancient traditions in the East, quote unquote, are making their way into Western society out of context.
Yes.
We see this with Tantra. We see this with Taoist Jade Egg exercises, that it's simply often, not always, but often reduced to this, oh, what a pretty stone, I'm just going to put it up my yoni and magic is going to happen. That's so naive, and it doesn't serve justice to the 3,000 years of practice and evidence that's collected in this tradition. So we gotta be aware of what we are actually talking about here.
Okay, so can I pause you for a minute, because you bring up a point. It's about doing these practices properly and with guidance. And so exactly the way they're presented, just put this egg in your yoni and walk around with it all day. That is walking around with an egg in your yoni, is that the best way to practice?
No,
okay.
It isn't. Okay. Simply because by the nature of, by the biomechanical positioning of the pelvic floor, it's subject to, what am I doing? It's subject to weight from just because of gravity when we are in the upright position. So adding weight to that is simply demanding from the pelvic floor to work statically against increased resistance over time. So if you do that over, hours, I don't see the point in doing that, because we're talking about striated muscle. The pelvic floor musculature is striated muscle, just like my biceps. Yeah. So striated muscle, in order to become stronger, it requires a type of strength training regimen where you have a rhythmic interplay between contraction and relaxation, proper, full relaxation. Because during relaxation, the muscle is able to mobilize new, the blood flow goes through it, it refills its energy supplies, nutrients and oxygen, and then you can get ready for another contraction.
So again, I want to summarize that. So the relaxation is equally important as the contraction. So walking around in a contracted state all day, trying, with this weight is not actually it's not actually strengthening anything.
No, it's not purposeful.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks for pointing that out. It's important. And then so with this popular delivery of these, and out of context delivery of these perfect ancient exercises, we risk that someone buys a crystal that has been dipped in some sort of chemical to look more pretty. And since we're talking about stone, it's a porous thing, so it absorbs chemicals. And then if you put that inside of your body, you can get those chemicals into your bloodstream, and that's very unhealthy. So it's things like that happen when we're dealing with popular culture society, where anything can be bought and sent through the mail without a proper user manual, without the context for which it's going to be used. Mm-hmm. So we have to acknowledge that if you're going to use a stone in your yoni, you need to make sure that the stone has never been in touch with that sort of treatment, chemical treatment, and that if you have a yoni that's shaped in a certain way with the uterus, also that can make the stone become entrapped, that you ensure that the type of gemstone you use is drilled so that you can put a string through it and make a knot so that the string is hanging out just like a tampon, so you can easily pull it out. And then of course have proper ways to take care of the hygiene, to rinse it properly before you use it the next time. So all of these things are very important to have in place before you begin practicing. So that's relating to the stone. And then we can, of course, talk about how to do proper exercises.
Yeah, could you give us, so that's beautiful. That's so like making sure that your stone is not treated in chemical dye. That's very important. So you want to make sure that whatever stone person that you're dealing with is actually credible. And so you want to ask those questions. How is the stone treated? You know, is it polished? Any chemicals added? Is it bleached? That sort of thing. So you know what you're putting in your body, right? And then also to make sure that you're cleaning it properly. So I recommend washing the stone with, you know, whatever you wash your yoni with, or if you don't wash your yoni with anything, as you're not supposed to, then making sure that you're washing it with something organic, non-toxic, right? And then I also recommend soaking it, particularly for the drilled ones, and just a few drops of food-grade hydrogen peroxide, just as a kind of like sterilizing antibacterial. And then you take it out, you rinse it off again, and then you can send it to dry and use it again. So proper user instructions are really important when you're doing these practices. So let's just give an example of how you would do these practices properly, because again, my training was sexual yoga, and you use them for like 15, 20, it's like a yoga practice, like however long you want to do your yoga, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, right? And so you use them very mindfully, very purposefully. There's a series of exercises that you do, and it's yoga. It's integration of body, mind, and spirit. It's using the breath, using movement, using your awareness to create this experience of, you know, health and strength in the entire body. So what would you advise?
Well, I would like to give some basic principles that people can take home, because there's so, like you said, there's so many exercises, and given the nature of this video, we are not able to properly instruct people. But I want people to know that to add weight for your pelvic floor to work itself harder than it does when you are, you know, not thinking about what you're doing, you can do the following. You can change your positioning. So if you're lying down flat on your back, you're not exposing the pelvic floor to the extra weight that simply comes from gravity. So that's the first thing you can do. You can ensure that you're in a vertical position or semi-vertical, because if you're on all fours, your pelvis is in the position where your yoni is actually closer to vertical in the, not in relationship to your body, but in relationship to the space and like the planet Earth and the sky above, than if you're standing up straight, because it slants backwards when we are standing up straight. So when you're in the position of all fours, like standing on your knees and your
doggy style.
Doggy style. Then your yoni is actually pointing more in this direction. Because if you are, so that was one thing, positioning. And then the next thing is you can, if you want to, add some weight from by using, for example, a jade egg. So the importance here is all of those things have been accounted for that we talked about: hygiene, type of stone, all that. And then the placement of the stone. Because if you put it as far up as possible, there's a fair chance that your very, very flexible vaginal tube will simply go, oh, okay, hug around it and just hold it without you having to deal with weight at all. Because the smooth muscle structure of the vaginal tube will have a tendency to hug anything that comes in connection with it, just like it likes to do with limbs.
It's going to snuggle the egg.
Exactly. So point here is to have the egg as close to the pelvic floor as possible. So it means that it's going to be further towards the opening, not in the actual pelvic floor opening, but just above it. You're using an egg that has a drilled hole through the pointy end. because then you can have a string through it and you can hold on to the string and you can control how much that string. Oh, look, we have. Hi, Persephone. It's wonderful to see you making an appearance on our show. Oh, I'm so enjoying this. Okay, so you can hold on to the string. So imagine you're in this doggy style, all fours position, and you're holding the string so that you know your pelvic floor is actually in touch with the egg. And then you'll do your contraction, which is to squeeze around your 3 openings, squeeze them tight together, and then have this intention to pull your pelvic floor up towards your heart. So this is not going to be visible to anyone on the outside unless they're staring between your legs, because it looks like your yoni is disappearing inwards. Well, not disappearing, but drawing itself in. So that's the sensation of squeezing together and pulling up into the body, direction heart, and then let go completely. And if you're not sure whether you're able to fully relax, I strongly recommend that you take the time to do at least 3 deep belly breaths. If your jade egg, it feels like it's coming out when you're contracting, it means you're doing it the wrong way. Then you're pushing out.
Wow. Okay. So this is really, it's really, really important. So what you're describing is a very specific mindfulness practice. So it's not just you're going to put it in and you go, and then you're done. It's like, it's very, very, conscious. It's very mindful. It's very present. You're working with the breath in and the muscle contractions. It's very deliberate. It's a deliberate practice.
It's very deliberate. And thank you for pointing out the aspect of awareness, because that's something that in my clinical practice, that's what all the women that come to me are struggling with. They have a lack of awareness about the anatomy of their yoni, their lady parts. They have a lack of awareness about what they're doing. Like, relaxation is often actually not relaxation. When I examine them, I see that no, you're not relaxed, you're actually contracting. And then when they think they're contracting, they may be relaxing. So everything may be all over the place. So applying a type of exercise regimen that requires that you have optimum awareness is going to give so much more benefit than just doing what you said, just squeezing all you can and just hoping for the best, because chances are you're just clenching your buttocks.
Yeah, so this is how, from what you're saying, is like, this is how the Jade Egg practices can be extremely useful when done correctly, is that they cultivate this awareness. So like, an awareness is us actually inhabiting this part of our body. And because of our cultural conditioning, so many of us walk around disassociated we live from the waist up, right? And so doing this practice brings your attention and your awareness. And it's just like any other kind of exercise. When you go to the gym, if you're just like this, you're not going to get the effect. But if you're very deliberate and mindful and aware and like really feeling into the muscles and really combining your breath with the movement, experts say you get so much more bang for your buck, so to speak, right? The exercise is actually effective as opposed to just kind of a waste of energy. So same with this, and so important with when we're talking about the pelvic floor, the vagina, the yoni, so to speak. It's an aware. It's like a meditation. Again, It's yoga. It's yoga. It's yoni yoga.
Exactly. It's yoni. Yeah, it is. It really is. And so it's important to recognize that. And we talked about there's so many factors here, but that awareness aspect is what really makes it stand out and makes it a more, it's the higher likelihood of you actually getting success. Because if we just go about and do exercises that are just about squeezing to the max of your ability, and then for an X number of repetitions, and then just do that, if we don't think about or use actively the breath in conjunction to it, the way the many different Jade Egg exercises are designed from Taoism, with different combinations or different ways of coordinating breath and musculature in order to also address those pranas that we talked about. If we don't take the breath into account, we're not really sure whether the exercises we're doing are going to have an effect on our physical functioning when we're not doing our exercises anymore. Because most of the time, the pelvic floor works for us without us having to think about it, right? To make sure that we have ability to contract and relax our pelvic floor no matter what our breath is doing. We want to exercise contractions and relaxation in many different ways of coordination with the breath. We want to be able to contract with the exhalation. We want to do it with the inhalation. We want to do it fast. We want to do it slow. All these things and different positions, because we never sit still for a whole day.
Yeah, so introducing variety into your practice. And so I just want to mention here, because we've spoken a lot about like your stress urinary incontinence. And so Jade Egg practices are not only prescribed for that. It's a way of like, it's kind of preventative medicine, right? It's exercising. I don't, need to exercise my arm because it's atrophied. I don't want to wait till that part. I want to keep it healthy. So it's part of like your health regimen, right? And so, and so to wrap it up, because we've gotten a lot of really amazing content, and it's been so amazing to drink from the well of your knowledge of, of this. It sounds like what we've said, to sum it up, is that these practices, Jade Egg practices, are safe, are healthy when done with proper guidance and proper instruction. So that's been the thing that's missing. Miss Gwyneth Paltrow, we just want to say, we appreciate what your support of alternative therapies, and next time, like, give people some instructions, right? Don't just say, hey, buy an egg. Like, we actually have to have some guidance about how to use these, proper guidance.
Because you're so right that these Jade Egg exercises, they address many issues, simply because, like all the other Taoist-based exercises and acupuncture, it's all about regaining balance. So whenever we are out of balance, we can have problems with leaking of anything, or we can have problems with obstipation. So if you're suffering from constipation, then just as relevant for you. It can be used both if you're imbalanced in this direction or another.
Yes. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. Well, lots of juicy information. We hope you were able to stick with us the whole time and learn and understand why the Jade Egg practices, when done correctly, when done with proper guidance, are actually a potent and powerful health and wellness practice for you. So don't believe the hype. Get the correct information. Get information from people who actually study and practice this stuff, and learn and grow.
Yeah.
Yay!
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.